Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Hersman, Chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. An investigator from the NTSB's Seattle office actually arrived on scene here last night, and the rest of our team is arriving from DC and Texas and other locations around the country today. Some of our investigators have gone direct to the accident scene. I came over here to speak with you first, and then I will make my way over to the accident site since we just arrived. The NTSB is an independent federal agency charged with investigating accidents in all modes of transportation. We are responsible for investigating every civil aviation accident and then select accidents in other modes of transportation on the highways, and the railroads, pipelines, and on the waterways. We're charged by Congress to determine the probable cause of those transportation accidents, and we issue recommendations to prevent them from reoccurring in the future. We will have an investigator in charge of this team. His name is Mr. Robert Aceta. He has over 25 years of experience, and he will be leading the staff's work, and the parties that we designate to the investigation will be working with him. The NTSB is going to be examining the following areas: bridge design and maintenance, human performance, motor carrier operations, and survival factors and emergency response. Before I go any further, on behalf of all of us at the NTSB, I would like to say that our thoughts and prayers go out to those who were injured or involved in the bridge collapse. We are hoping for their speedy and full recoveries. This is our first day on scene, as I've mentioned, so I don't have a lot of information at this time, but let me go through what we do know. At approximately 7 p.m. last evening, a 160-foot span of the Interstate 5 bridge in Mount Vernon collapsed into the Skagit River. Witnesses reported prior to the collapse that a truck tractor, in combination with an oversized semi-trailer that was traveling southbound on Interstate 5, struck the overhead truss superstructure of the bridge. We know that the bridge is comprised of 2 northbound lanes and 2 southbound lanes separated by a median barrier. Beginning on the south side of the bridge, as you're approaching from Mount Vernon, there are 4 approach spans that transition from the land side to the overwater portion of the bridge. As you then move to the overwater portion of the bridge, there are 4 bridge spans. Each of those bridge spans is 160 feet long. As you exit on the far side, on the north end, there are 4 additional approach spans that mirror those on the south side. The bridge is 1,111 feet long, and there's 9 inches there, 1,111 feet, 9 inches of the bridge, and so that's the total length. The bridge was designed in 1954, and it was constructed in 1955. The bridge is a through truss steel bridge, and the specific type of truss bridge it is a Warren truss with verticals. This is a very common bridge design, especially during the period in which it was built. There are inspection requirements for this type of bridge, including the inspection of the substructure of the bridge, and specifically underwater inspections are required. And there are also requirements for inspections of the deck and the superstructure of the bridge. We're in the process of collecting and reviewing maintenance and inspection records, and we are also looking at any damage reports or repairs that have been made to this bridge. Throughout the next few days, our investigators will be working to thoroughly document the scene, and they will be gathering in the beginning stages. They'll be focusing on perishable evidence, on things that might change. We want to make sure that we are able to fully document the bridge, to do interviews of individuals, including the tractor-trailer driver. Our mission is to not just understand what happened, but understand why it happened and how we can prevent something like this from occurring here in Washington, but also all around the country. We want to make sure that we don't see events where interstate bridges drop into the water below them. That is not what we expect, and certainly not what travelers on the roadway are expecting from their infrastructure. We expect the on-scene portion of our work here to take about 7 to 10 days. However, depending on how long it takes to remove the dropped span from the waterways, to lay it out and to document the damage and the sequence of failure, we might have a number of investigators who will be staying longer, and we could be rotating people in and out depending on how long that effort takes. Generally speaking, when we come to conduct an accident investigation in any mode of transportation, we generally tell people it takes us about 12 months to complete the final report. However, we will be providing regular updates to you on factual information that we identify during the course of our on-scene investigation, and we will continue to provide updates from headquarters as the investigation continues. Now, if we find any issues that we think need immediate attention, any safety concerns that need to be addressed, either specifically on this bridge or other bridges, we do have the ability to issue safety recommendations at any time, and we often do that in our investigations when we identify an acute issue that needs to be addressed immediately. Since we're just beginning our investigation, as I mentioned, I haven't yet been out to the scene yet. We don't have a great deal of information to share with you, but over the coming days, we'll be working very closely with the officials who have been on scene for the last hours since the event occurred, and we'll be working to get debriefed and provided information that they might have. For the latest on media briefings, you can access information about our efforts on Twitter. We're at NTSB, and also our website at www.ntsb.gov. We will provide ongoing information there. One final comment. I know that Governor Inslee and your senators and congressional delegation were here speaking to you. We very much appreciate the outstanding cooperation that we've had from the state and local officials, particularly the highway teams and the public safety teams who have been on scene working so hard. We very much appreciate their efforts and the welcome and the support that we've received thus far on scene. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Yes, sir.
When you look at the numbers to say this had a structural rating of 47 out of 100, are you guys using the same numbers, apples to apples, that the state does?
The question is, when we are looking at the integrity of the bridge, the safety of the bridge, are we looking at the same numbers that the state is? Yes. When we are evaluating information that's provided to us, we will first go to the state to ask them about their records, about their historical records for this bridge. Obviously, this is a bridge that has lived a very long life. But what we know about this bridge is that even though it is advanced in age, that the records and the demonstration of this bridge is that it has been healthy throughout that life. It is showing its age, certainly, and that is why issues associated with infrastructure are on our most wanted list. The NTSB has a top 10 list of most wanted safety improvements, and preserving the nation's infrastructure is one of those items on this list. And I think you can see with this bridge that if it had been built today, it would have been built to different design standards to make sure that there were accommodations for the type of traffic that we're seeing today and some of the safety concerns that we have today. Yes, sir.
I want to expand on the 47 out of 100. one, is that a good, bad, or average number nationwide? And two, what does 47 tell you that, say, like a third, say if you compare a 30 to a 47 to a 70, what does that really mean?
Sure. The question is about interpreting the numbers that have been assigned, the values that have been assigned to the bridges. What I'd like to do is have an opportunity to actually review those. We have not yet seen the records, and so before I make any comments on what those mean, let our team get a copy of those records, have an opportunity to review them, understand them, and then we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. We will provide multiple press conferences in the coming days where we'll be able to talk about some of those issues.
Madam
Yes,
Chair.
ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kate Martin with the Skagit Valley Herald, and we're wondering how much of this investigation that the NTSB is completing can run concurrently with the efforts to replace the bridge, because I know everyone is eager to have it replaced, and I'm sure you have to do things in a certain way. Can you just go over that timeline a bit better?
Kate, thank you for introducing yourself. The question had to do with the concurrent activities associated with the ongoing investigation of the cause of the collapse and the activities to get this corridor up and running again and make repairs. Those are absolutely things that will happen on parallel tracks. We're working very closely with the law enforcement personnel who have been on scene since the event to capture some of that documentation that they've already done to take those measurements. We're going to be doing a laser scan, 3D laser scan of the bridge as well as that tractor trailer that has been identified as a point of interest for us. What we want to do is make sure that we are documenting everything before we reach any conclusions. And so I would caution you all, we really need to lay out the facts first before we reach conclusions about cause. We expect that work to go on simultaneously. I think we heard this morning the local officials talking about trying to find a temporary fix. I know they're working to do that, but that may take some time. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, Kirk Williams from CBC Television in Vancouver. What extent is the driver of the truck cooperating with your officials in studying this?
The question is, to what extent is the driver of the truck cooperating with our team? We have good information from the local law enforcement that were on scene that they were able to talk to the driver. We are going to be getting their records from them, and we will also work to do our own interview of the driver so we're able to ask some questions about what he saw, what he experienced, what he was familiar with, what he knew prior to the approach to the bridge, and about his vehicle and the height limitations that he was expected to be operating under. Yes, sir.
Steve Militich with the Seattle Times. Will the NTSB have some say or cooperation with the state on whether the fix is adequate and whether the rest of the bridge is structurally sound? Will you have a role in that?
The question is, will the NTSB have a role in determining whether or not the bridge is safe and whether it can be reused again? That really is the responsibility of the bridge operator in consultation with Federal Highway Administration. There was some discussion about funding that was going to be provided, emergency funding that was going to be provided. I want to make very clear that the NTSB is the investigator of the accident. We are not the bridge owner or operator, and we will not make determinations about when the bridge is sound to reopen. But as part of our investigation, we will be documenting damage to the bridge. In the earlier press conference, I heard the secretary talking about potential damage to the piers and how that might make their decision-making process different. You can expect that we will all want to have an evaluation of the substructure of the bridge post-collapse, and that will be part of our investigative activities that we're interested in as well. Yes, ma'am.
Hannah Scott, Como Radio. Earlier in your original statements, it sounded to me as if you said you'd be updating throughout your investigation on any potential safety issues you found in this bridge and other bridges in our state. Is that from looking over inspection records of all bridges, or will you be looking on site at other bridges as well?
Sure. Hannah's question has to do with the comment that I made earlier about if we identify any safety deficiencies, that we'd put that information out. And my focus in that statement was if we identify any acute safety issues, that may be appropriate to other bridges that might have a similar design or a similar risk, that we would want to put that information out. And so, of course, we're looking at the event on this bridge, but if we find anything that needs to go out as far as a safety concern to the state of Washington for its bridges, or for that matter, to the Federal Highway Administration to get out to all bridge owners in the country, we will do that. I heard a discussion earlier of the Minneapolis bridge collapse that we investigated. We made a number of recommendations from that investigation, and some of those recommendations actually went to the other states to take a look at the bridges that they had in their inventory to determine if there were issues that they were needing to face or fix. So that's what we're talking about, if there are broader lessons to be learned from this event. One last question.
Kirk Johnson, New York Times. You mentioned this was a very common design nationally. Do you have any idea how many of those bridges in this vintage are still up and running, and what percentage might have been replaced?
Sure. Kirk's question has to do with these through truss bridges and this very common design, and really trying to put some numbers on that to see what the national bridge inventory is for that type of design. And the second part of the question is how many of those bridges might have been refurbished or replaced. Let me get back to you, see if we can find some of that data, if it exists. I will tell you that we have tens of thousands of bridges in our country, and so one of the real challenges is making sure that we are on top as a nation on top of all of that data. And so we'll work on getting an answer to that question for you at the next press conference. Thank you all very much, and we will talk to you soon.